The roundtable session is on big data applications in urban transport, and the session is being chaired by Mr. GVL Satyakumar, Managing Director, CRIS. He is from Indian Railway Traffic Services, 1991 batch. He has served as Head of Operations in various divisions of railways. And along with that, we have our co-chairperson, Professor Geeta Krishnan Ramadurrai, who is professor at IIT Madras. And to guide the discussion, our moderator is Mr. Narendra Verma, Technical Advisor, Sustainable Urban Mobility GIZ. He is a transport planner with more than 8 years of experience in working on projects related to sustainable transport. So to begin the session, I request the moderator, Mr. Narendra Kumar, to guide the proceedings of the section. So please.
Thank you. Before we go to our chair and co-chair for opening remarks, maybe I'll just take 2 minutes to detail you about what we are going to discuss today. So the session is titled as Big Data. And when we talk about big data in 2025, the discussion has, what I feel is fundamentally changed from what it was probably 2 years back, right? Today, we are not only discussing about data that is coming from traffic sensors or data which is coming from ATM machines, right? Today, we are in the midst of generative AI revolution. So if you look at it, the industry itself is growing at a very fast pace. If you look at the ecosystem, there are frontier labs like XAI, Anthropic, and then there are hyperscalers, and at one end, there are GPU providers, right? Billions and billions are being poured in this industry. And I'll give you an example. You look at NVIDIA. It's a GPU provider. And 2 weeks back, they hit a market cap of $5 trillion US. And just to give you a context, the Indian equity markets are valued at $5 trillion, almost, right? So we have one company and we have a country whole together. So you can see the extent of opportunity that we have here, right? But of course, with an opportunity, we have challenges also, right? So much compute power is required. We will need energy as well, right? How do we sustainably use that energy? And then there is a question of application as well. We have data, we have tools. But if you talk about these GenAI tools, right, we have probably barely scratched the surface as to what we can do with these tools and LLMs. So that's where probably I'll wrap up the discussion. We'll discuss all this. And then there is the issue of privacy as well because of so much data that is available. So I'll stop my discussion here and probably move to our co-chair and chair for starting the opening remarks. So let me invite Mr. Satyakumarji from Indian Railways. He will present his opening remarks and then we'll move to the discussion. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon to you all. Yeah, how many of you know this organization which I was supposed to be the managing director? How many of you know of this organization called CRIS? Any show of hands? I mean, still there are around 20% of the people who hardly know about this, or maybe around 40%. Yeah, let me just tell you, now let me ask another question. How many of you know Indian Railways? Yeah, or maybe 200% of you. So just to put it in context, you know, why I'm here, and in fact, Indian Railways needs no introduction. I think we are the 4th largest system. We transport almost 20 million passengers every day. And we transport almost around 4 million tons of cargo originating. And to do all this, we deploy almost 3.5 lakh freight wagons, around 20,000 locomotives, and around 60,000 passenger carrying coaches. Now, come to think of it, prior to 1986, and the entire network, which is around 70,000 route kilometers, around 1,40,000 total track kilometers, was all managed without a single computer. Got it? So, but in the last 4 decades, somewhere in 1986, Railways formed an organization called CRIS, which I am currently heading, which was given the mandate to actually design, develop, deploy, and maintain the entire IT applications as well as the infrastructure for running of the railways. I mean, we are like, if you see the iceberg, we are actually absolutely hidden. That is very evident in the public domain. And if you look at the progress of what we have done in the IT field. In fact, the first 2 decades has been mostly on 2 applications. One is on the passenger reservation system, and the second one was a part on the freight operations. But the last 2 decades, let me tell you categorically that absolutely there is no function of the railway which is not digitized. And as we speak today, any activity which is occurring on the railway, be it running of the trains, be it as the original applications of passenger ticketing or the train operations. Train operations, I don't know how many of you are familiar, especially people who are working in the transport sector, in the metro and all, must be familiar with how the trains are run. You know, as the trains keep running, every parameter of the operation, as it charts its way in the time and space, almost every parameter is getting into a backend database. And not only that, the entire infrastructure, whether it is track or whether it is categorized infrastructure in transport sector into fixed infra and rolling infra. For us, the fixed infra is the track, signal, and the traction. And the rolling infra is about the coaches, the wagons, the locomotives, and the entire asset life cycle, be it right from the time of induction of an asset into the system, through its repair and maintenance cycles, till it is condemned and scrapped. The entire asset management is done through the IT applications of which are developed by this organization. Not only that, finance, HR, and procurement, which are the core backbone of any organization, too are digitized. We transact almost around 3 lakh crore of materials, for material procurement. It is done through an absolutely independent system of the Indian Railways. Clearly, financial transactions, be it revenue expenditure or capital expenditure, they're all through our own dedicated systems, almost all combining to around 6 lakh crore. So, this context of big data, I mean, let me also tell you that last 10 years, this data acquisition, which was hitherto mostly on a manual mode, everyone used to enter the data, whether you're doing something on the track, you know, I mean, you go for maintenance, there are a number of parameters which need to be recorded as per the checklist. So when we started digitization, most of this data was actually getting on a manual mode. I mean, they used to come, take it, and then put it into the system. But in the last decade, I mean, whether it is track maintenance, whether it is ultrasonic flaw detection or oscillation monitoring system, track recording cars, or whether it is our rail wheel interactions, we use our wagon impact load detectors, and even our locomotives. Last 10 years, all our locomotives are fitted with GPS trackers. We find that sensors are coming into place for data acquisition, both in passenger amenities, safety, as well as in almost every application we find. So you can't get bigger than this as far as the big data is concerned. Now, we have been running the system for the last so many decades based on the data what we generate. We are a single organization. The entire 70,000 route kilometers is managed by a single entity. Indian Railways, even though it is a ministry, it is also an organization which runs the system. And we have been doing it. But now coming to the topic here, no? What do you do with this data for improving the various functions of the railway? We look at data traditionally in the 6 categories. Right from the chairman level, where he wants to talk about return on capital employed, and breaking it down into the components of asset turnover multiplied by the profit margin and the leverage ratio. Break it down into the subcomponents of business, operations, asset management, capital expansion and development. These are the 4 categories, and finance, HR, and procurement. So any data application we use, look at what is it that it's going to do for the business in terms of KPIs of market share and growth, operational efficiency, operations in terms of how is it going to improve your operational efficiency. Assets, we took it out of the operations because we just wanted, even though they are very closely linked, I mean, is it going to improve your reliability and availability of the asset, be it the locomotive or the track. And finance, HR, procurement, all these have their own KPIs. And we have started using, I mean, as we started using this data, in fact, we integrated the entire gamut of this data which comes into the back end. And the biggest, I can say, the change is coming in predictive maintenance. We are now moving gradually from a periodical asset maintenance regime into something called a condition-based maintenance, with all this data coming from our sensors. So this is one biggest change which we find on the condition-based. The second, of course, passenger ticketing. You must be all using Tatkal. During Tatkal period, we almost transact around 30,000 tickets per minute. And you all know about a lot of things that people never get a ticket when you really want it at that time. But I'm sure the last 3 months, if you have seen, we have introduced certain steps. I don't know how many of you are aware, because we find that almost 5 lakh users log into the system at one point of time. And we recently introduced a system like a content distribution which screens this 5 lakh for different parameters. Now we reduce that 5 lakh. There are a lot of bots, let me tell you frankly, which are trying to access. They create, for the same passenger travel, they create almost 8 or 9 instances of trying to hit the system and trying to take a ticket. And once a ticket is successful, everything vanishes. So I mean, we made a system in which now we are able to bring that 5 lakh to almost around 3 lakh users. The next step, what we did with all this analysis, what we did was trying to bring in a bit more rationality. I mean, instead of a bot, we now made a delay of 30 seconds for filling of the form, and at the payment time almost a stagger, trying to confuse and get the actual people to do it. I mean, there are a number of applications. I mean, Aadhaar based. I don't know. Now during Tatkal and during the advanced reservation period start for the first half an hour and for the first 15-20 minutes, we have introduced Aadhaar so that authentic users only can be allowed to log. Son can book the ticket for his father even though his son is not traveling, but son should have a Aadhaar. So these are all derivations which have come through the learnings what we got. So data can take you a lot in terms of trying to tell you what to go. But again, the policy is something which we need to do as an organization. Sure, during the course of the discussions, we'll have some more conversations. And with this, I think I'll pass it on to IIT Chennai. Confusion actually, who's supposed to do what is the role of a chairman?
It's always a confusion here. So anyways, over to Professor Geeta Krishnan Ramadurai. He's from IIT Madras, and he'll take over now for the remarks for co-chair.
Yeah, thanks, Narendra. Welcome all. It's great to see a full house. Extra chairs too. So I want to just make a few points to start with, and we have an excellent panel. All of them have worked on hands-on with data. We really want to hear from all of them. Right? I just want to give a slightly bigger picture, higher picture here. Transportation has two parts, right? One is demand, and then you have supply. This is something that we need to understand. Right? So when we talk about data, we tend to focus on either the demand side of data or we try to focus on supply side, but these are not independent, right? They go very, very close, hand in hand. So in that sense, it's like a demand-supply equilibrium kind of a problem. It's a behavioral economics kind of problem, right? So that's something we need to keep in mind as we move forward. About 16, 17 years back when I came back to India to start my academic career, there was hardly any data available. Right? Couldn't build any model because there was no data. So what we started out doing at IIT Madras was to first start building sensors to collect data in Indian traffic. And Indian traffic is very notorious, right? And I think the initial 5-6 years of the previous decade, we devoted completely to that, and we did develop a lot of sensors. But it took another decade for many of these things to filter down to actual practice. Today, when we talk about smart cities, Venkatesh will talk about Bangalore. We have people from Kumta and Chennai Smart City also. About 100 smart cities in the country have developed, installed more than 1 lakh of sensors. And suddenly there is surplus of data. and we're not really utilizing that. So that's something that we need to really touch upon, right? At IIT Madras, one of the key things is once you have the sensors, all this data, we need to standardize it, make it available, make it accessible. Unless data is opened up, it's not going to really be productive, right? Data that's kept locked, like unlike treasure that's kept locked, data that's kept locked goes waste, right? So unless and until it's being used, it's not going to give us benefits. So that's something we need to keep in mind. At IIT Madras, we're trying to develop a tech stack to look at this. So you need data, you also need models, right? So they go hand in hand. So just data is not going to help. What should be the model standards for that? That's another aspect I think we need to look at, right? So the supply side is usually driven by physics. There are physical rules, principles that need to be followed. You can't break them, right? But when we talk about demand, what we call as demand is actually volume, right? So there are certain number of people who want to use a certain transportation mode or a facility, but if that is already operating under capacity, what you're observing is the operation at capacity or the volume of the traffic, right? The actual number of people who want to get on there is much higher. The only way to discover that is when you have models for demand and supply. So that is something that we need to keep in mind, and that's why I come back to this need for modeling these together, and that's where digital twins definitely will help. So digital twins will help us understand the demand-supply interactions. Will also help us understand what changes will impact the demand in what ways. Both of these are important, right? So while we get excited about all the data, we also need to think what kind of modeling approaches will work best with this data. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. I also had these couple of challenges like what Narendra said. One is equity, right? So if you have a lot of data, who is it going to benefit is very important, right? If the data is going to be put behind firewalls and priced, then the people who can afford access to it are going to benefit more. The people who don't will again be at a disadvantage. That's something we need to keep in mind. The other is, of course, privacy also, right? So it's very, very easy to completely unravel one's life, right? We are willingly sharing it with Google, but if it becomes available in the public domain, what implications it will have is still not completely understood. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. And so with those initial thoughts, I would like to hand it back to Narendra and take the discussion forward.
Thank you, Professor. I have been informed that I need to wrap it up before 4 o'clock deadline. So I think the CM is coming. So 3:45 we'll wrap it up. So probably we'll have less time, but let me start by introducing the panel now. So I'll start from my right. We have Mr. Kithor Nathani, who is a Managing Director and CEO at UMTC. And then we have Professor Vijay Kovali from ISC Bangalore. We have Mr. Asit Kadayan. He is Deputy Director General, Digital Twin Unit, Department of Telecommunications. Then we have Mr. Venkatesh Subbarao. He is Director and Head, India Operations, Arcadis, IBI Group. And we have Professor Swapnil Garg. He is Professor at IIM Indore. And then we have Rahul Shankar. He is Director at Nammayatri. So let me start this discussion probably by starting with Mr. Kishore Nathani, because you are working with UMTC and you are on a regular basis working with government authorities, ULBs, and there is always a discussion about so much data that is available with the cities, but they are not able to use it, right? So in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest hurdle that cities are facing probably to utilize the data? Is it because of technical capacity that is not available, or is it the institutional problem that we have today?
Thank you, Narendra. We have just heard the statement that a lot of data is available. It's wonderful to hear that a lot of data is available, but to whom? When we say cities, and we had the professor talking about the demand side and the supply side, as commuters in the field of urban transport, we are generating the data, and it goes to a number of agencies. come to your things a little later. We have, if we are moving on a metro, the metro takes the data from us. Whether it shares it with the bus services remains to be seen. As a person who's traveling by bus, none of us who have come here would have traveled by bus, but that's a different story altogether. The bus supplier side with the bus operating company collects some data of ours, and thereafter it holds it to itself, and there is no exchange of data between the supply side itself. And then each of us, 80% of us, be it a normal citizen also, we are practically, to an extent I would say, abnormal citizens. We are not the normal citizens. Let me be honest about it. But what we have done is, we have a mobile, we have downloaded a lot of apps, and with the mobile, I would say telecom people are here, 1.2 billion users of telecom data, and each of us then download on an average 20 to 30 apps, and each of these apps, practically we have given a consent for about 12 to 13 odd parameters which are being collected. So we are throwing the data as individuals, as computers, even if not as a commuter. Who gets the data is a different thing. So yes, data is available, but to whom remains a question. And in fact, the managing director of CRIS is also here. I would love to hear from him. In fact, a very aspirational thing, okay, he's going to make the CRIS data available to all of us, so you can congratulate him in advance. So you have CRIS, you have bus operating company, you have the metro corporations, we as citizens, we as commuters, a lot of data is available. Now add this to the FASTag, add this to the GST e-way bill, add this to a number of other things which we don't even know, as parking, etc., etc. Huge data sets are available. Modeling will come in later. Once that data is shared, equitably shared, I would say it enables everybody in planning process. And the moment, because we are in the domain of planning the, I would say, commute or the mobility of a particular city or a particular metropolitan area, etc. Traditionally, we have been doing the typical reactive approach कि कहाँ से reports में क्या कुछ मिल गया वो निकाल लिया, थोड़ा survey कर लिया, 0.5%, 0.75%, 1%, 2%, 3%, and that is it. Some household survey. But even we, because we have to follow a particular template which is stated by the government as a guideline, mobility plan or CTTS, etc., we use that template, otherwise the report will formally not get approved. But imagine these data sets which are very real time, 90% data set not being used, not been made available, and then to be used. It's a big issue for me, and I would love to state that we have been doing comprehensive mobility plans for about 50 to 60 cities in India. In 2026, when we come back to the UMI, I would love to do a city mobility plan minus the toolkit of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Because if this data is available, this is much robust and better than the typical toolkit. Now coming to the barriers, barriers are there, it will be broken. There has to be, I would say, one leader in terms of, you can say, a lighthouse project, one city. and one empowered committee to take the decision. It is possible. I mean, there is no problem in that. In fact, the readiness is also there. You have the TRI Act of 2023 and Privacy Act, etc. Let's be very real about it. That is there in 2024 also. It has been published. कितने सारे तो हम कंसेंट दे देते हैं बिना उसके बाद हम प्राइवेसी की बात करते हैं. रिमेन्स टू बी सीन. इन एनी केस दैट इज ऑल बीइंग एनोनिमाइज्ड. सो it is just that one whip, one leader, one city, one empowered committee, and some funds being made available, and we have Asit who's going to be providing us the funds. So thank you.
Thank you, Nathani sir. So Nathani sir talked about data sharing. So on this point, probably I take it from here and I'll go to Professor Swapnil, because you worked a lot on PPP, right? And what I have also seen, we have these private operators, right, who are working. We have Rahul also from Namayatri, and I don't know if anybody from Cello is there. So what is happening is that, just like he stated, right, the data is, the ownership of the data remains with the operator, right? The government probably is not getting the access to the data that they would like to. So how do we structure an agreement between a private party and a government party so that the data doesn't just lie with the private operator, and government can also become a beneficiary of this data? So how do you think we could structure, contractually structure these agreements?
Thank you, Narendra, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. But as an academician, I can always take an attempt and sidestep your question. And that's what I'm going to do. You're asking me for a framework and a contractual framework. And when I hear Mr. Kishore talking about it, what I find is not really a problem on the frameworks and governance, but primarily on the approach. We have a parallel session going on here, which is talking about PPPs, moving from financing to partnerships. So just think about the genesis of that. We are talking about, we have to move away from financing PPP as a financing option to PPP as a trusting option and a partnership option. Coming it back to the big data and the data sharing issues that you talked about, I completely agree with you. We have a big problem about what is public data and what is private data. But on the side of who owns the public data and what use can it be put to, requires us to step back and look at what is the model of PPPs that we are talking about. We are talking about public, private coming together for the welfare of the consumer or the citizens. In this particular context, what is the role of the public? What is the role of the private? Unfortunately, our PPP models have borrowed from the West, and we have picked up a risk transfer model. So what we say is, you have the data, so Chris has the data, you're saying transfer it to me and then protect me so that no one else takes this data. Do we do that with respect to road? Do we do that with respect to airport? No. The government builds up an infrastructure and makes it as the underlying level on which the private sectors come and deliver. And what do the private sectors deliver? They use the same data, which is supposed to be the public infrastructure now, public data infrastructure, and bring in innovations on that. He was talking about, and he was saying, there seems to be a conflict upon which data should be shared with the private, which data should not be shared with the private. And during a conversation during the day, unfortunately what we have done is that we have brought down the government down to the level of a private sector party and said, the two of you are partners and equal partners. Sorry, no one in the world can be a partner or can be equal to the government. Government is a benevolent dictator. First of all, it's a dictator. It can decide what it wants to do. But it wants to be benevolent because it wants to work in the citizen's interest. So there is no talk about equality. The government should not be concerned upon that this guy is monetizing data. That's what he was there for. The private sector has to monetize the data. But remember, he is not monetizing it and taking away all the profits out of that. He's working in a market where as soon as he makes one attempt, someone else will copy him. So what is the role of the government's ownership of public data? It has to come out. The approach that I'm trying to talk about is we have to build up the public infrastructure where it is freely available. Unfortunately, our approach is that the government is also trying to defend its data, saying you will monetize it and you will use it for making profits. Yes, that's what PPP was supposed to be. We wanted the profit motive of the private sector to work in the interest of the citizens. And that is the approach that I'm looking at, that it has to change. And the fundamental thing about this is we have been talking about risk transfer mechanisms. We have to move to risk sharing mechanisms. We have to talk about joint venture organizations where the government has something, the private sector has something, they come together and they share the risks over there, both the risks and the rewards. Unfortunately, 20 years back, we took a view and all of these risk sharing arrangements were closed down and we moved to risk transfer. The typical BOT toll road highway infrastructure you talk about is, okay, I can't manage the road, my PWD department is bad, you take over the road, you toll it, you repair it, you fix it, and after 20 years you give it back. That was the risk transfer. We don't want risk transfer, we want risk sharing. I know you're good at something, and you know I'm so good at something. The government is really good at collecting data from across the platforms that you said, across all of them and putting them all together. And I suppose the big data policy of the government of India, data.gov.in, were all in this particular direction. But somewhere down the line, we started getting overly worried about the private sector monetizing it. Private sector was there to monetize it. Private sector is required to monetize it. So I'm coming back one step and saying it's an approach issue. It is not really about contractual framework and thing. As soon as we get the approach right, the contracts and the frameworks will follow in automatically.
Sure, thank you. Since we are on that topic and we have Rahul with us, Rahul, how do you perceive this issue of data ownership on the other side of the table? And also, maybe if you can talk about what you're doing at Namayatri also.
Yeah, firstly, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. So, pretty interesting direction because as an organization, Namayatri stands for openness, trust, transparency, and being built on a ONDC platform. The intention is also to be open with everything, right? Literally, one can find our ridership data on our website, very open, transparent. At this point in time, anyone can see how many auto trips, cab trips are happening in Chennai, Bangalore, etc. So the larger goal for us is how do we work very closely with any public transportation departments, governments, transport STAs, etc. So that we can use this data, we can use all the intelligence that we have built on last mile connectivity to help improve transportation, help improve mobility infrastructure in the state. So largely, I think coming back to the point that both Swapnil sir and even Kishore sir said, see, data is very private, of course. All of us have our own privacy when we talk about data, right? I think even with a lot of these mobile phones, for instance, Apple talks about privacy as their primary motto when they sell their mobile phones, right? So when it comes to data, people are very private. With respect to public data, for instance, a mobility data or any data that helps improvise a government's decision making on, say, any mobility problems or infrastructure for the state, a pseudonymized data would obviously help because that's where intelligence and outcomes can be built. Like very simple example, I think since you asked, we're also working very closely with couple of states at this point in time, which is Chennai, where we are working with Kumta, and we built a multimodal app for the state wherein last mile connectivity plus the integration happens with suburban rail, metro, as well as the MTC buses. Probably a year away from where this data will actually help improve bunch of things for the state. Like for instance, it can help in building parking policies. It can help in building travel decongestion policies for the state. It can help in building fleet schedules, fleet assignments, fleet deployments in the state. Probably also help build smart cities for the state, for the city. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to see if we can build a super intelligence layer with this data. But all of this is only possible when the data is open. I mean, when all of these departments come together, because in traditional aggregator-driven model, like, I mean, since we are in ride-hailing as well, the data is largely owned by the aggregator. I mean, it's completely controlled for monetary purpose, bunch of these things, right? But when the data is opened up, when data is actually interoperable, and when you kind of combine it with transportation data, that's where it builds a lot of bigger intelligence, and that's where the states can also benefit out of it. So that's one core area that we are currently working on. And I think good thing is a lot of states have been very smart in imbibing this, likes of West Bengal, likes of Tamil Nadu, likes of Kerala now, and bunch of these states are actually keen to build a large-scale multi-model solution, because end of the day, their realization is very simple. I mean, if private vehicles increase and public transport doesn't, so the imbalance will impact the economic growth. So that's the larger sense. Very brief summary from my end is data obviously is critical, but I mean, if it is also like Swapnil sir mentioned, how it can be collaborative with the government, how can it be made of better use when all the parties come together, that's where the larger value creation happens.
Thanks, Rahul. Maybe we move to specifics of data sets that we should be looking at right now. And for that, probably I'll move to Professor Kovli. Professor, you've been working with BMTC and STUs a lot. So as an STU or as a bus operator, as a transit operator, what kind of data sets that they should be looking at to probably improve their operations, or a lot of STUs are these days building ticketing applications also, right? So what kind of specific data sets or standards that they should be looking at?
So I'll do what Swapnil did. I will also sidestep the question a little bit. Not because of this, but we are talking about big data, right? And big data comes from the 5 V's: the volume, the velocity, the veracity, and the variety. And when we are talking about BMTC or BMRCL or any of this has existed for the last 20 years. Okay? So it's not like whatever BMTC is getting today, they haven't had 5 years back or 10 years back. They had access to some of this data. And what we know very clearly, while you're being very nice about government, is that when you have data and you have performance measures, they can be evaluated. So it's in the interest of government not to be evaluated, and sometimes very incorrectly evaluated. They might be doing a lot of good things, but people point out on the wrong thing. So it's easy for them not to have data. Okay. Now coming to the actual point that, and we need to start thinking about the bigger picture. And when we talk about big data, the advantage that we talk about is the bigger city, right? And at the city level, if we talk about it, the supply and demand, historically what we always did is the predict and provide, right? You predict that, okay, there are going to be so much more traffic on this road, because of which I'm going to increase the capacity, okay? And once we talk about multimodal transportations, and that should be the conversation, we shouldn't be talking anything about private vehicles. We got to talk about a couple of ways we can talk about it, but one of the ways is demand and provide, right? And what we demand is basically sustainability, our carbon emissions, right? So we got to look at it from the perspective of that. So when BMTC comes and they talk about what is my KPI, the KPIs that I have existed for a long time, right? The new KPI has to be, how do I make sure that the city's carbon footprint reduces by 5%? So then they have to work with the BMRCLs, they have to work with the mobile providers, right, the telecom providers, to understand our origin destinations, right? We need to also look at what are the KPIs that we look at a city level, and am I able to manage it, right? Every time, all these people, like, one of the big problems I have is BMRCL and BMTC don't think of themselves as competitors, right? In the public transport sector, they need to think first initially, oh, somebody is taking away my data, and only then they should think about, okay, private transport is my real competitor, right? So it has to be like the game theory part, right? I want to score the goal first. If not, let my partner score the first. Every time BMTC is giving up their most profitable routes to everybody else, right? So when we talk about it, when we talk to BMTC today, they'll say, hey, I lost my 5 different, like, or the 10 most profitable routes to BMRCL, why are you asking me for anything? Right? But coming to it, yeah, the major questions is you got to have real-time data. You got to know your origin destination data. You need to be able to share that data with the Namayatris and everybody else that goes along with it. And look at KPI at a city level rather than at an individual, as in it should come down to individual levels. But if we start at the city level where we start, don't blame each one of them, probably that's a better chance. Hope I answered your question, but yeah.
So from STUs, probably we'll move to another important topic, which is traffic congestion, right? Traffic management. And we have Mr. Subbarao, and they have implemented, I think, Astram project in Bangalore. It was talked about a lot in news as well. But maybe you can talk about how practical it was and what kind of hurdles that you faced while implementing the project, and what are the results, on-ground results, whether you are able to see some reduction in congestion due to particularly this project. If you can talk about that and explain us the project that you did. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is one big data and AI based platform that we have implemented in Bangalore. The idea was that we would not get into a lot of data was getting created in the city, like what Mr. Kishore was also talking about. And we needed to capitalize on that part. And then we didn't want to define or restrict to a particular data set. And then we wanted to actually create what we wanted to actually mitigate the situations. So what we said was, that was the real choice that we made to have a big data platform. Primarily because the data set is not known to us, the data set format was not known to us, and it is not structured, and it could come from any source. And end of the day, what we wanted is the real-time situational awareness. So that was the main biggest thing that the traffic police wanted to have. So what is actually happening and why it is actually happening, so that they know, because they say that we know what to do if you know what the real reason about that part. So from that point of view, we created this platform where the data sources could be maps service providers like Google and MapMyIndia's. And even we actually took data, sometimes we get data from Namayatri also. We get data from Namayatri, we get data from Ola, we get data from MovingSync. There are a lot of data sets that come, but inconsistently. There's no specific things that actually it is there, but then yes, we get a lot of data. So, but what was important for us was to actually make sure that we monitor and quantify the congestion in the city, and then tell them where it is actually happening and why it is actually happening. So we started off with a very frugal thing by using the map data, and then we were actually able to put trends about where the congestion is actually happening very clearly. And it was correlating very well with multiple data sets that we actually had. What was important was for us to stitch it together with the root cause, why it is actually happening. Because once we started looking into it, one of the biggest revelations that actually got to us was the recurring congestion, which is due to the systemic issues, was only 40%. The 60% congestion in the city was due to a lot of these incidents, special events, and a lot of these climate events or a lot of these public works. All those things were actually causing congestion, which was much higher than the systemic related issues. So that was a big revelation. Then we said, like, let's not focus on the systemic side. Anyway, that was not on their forte. So then they said, like, we need to improve our operations. Now then we started looking into data into much more deep detail. Then we said, like, what are these incidents which are leading to this kind of congestion? Then we looked at the data. Then we said, like, okay, the breakdowns, vehicle breakdowns was actually causing about 70% of these congestion problems. And then we said, like, okay, while this is actually happening, what vehicles were actually breaking down? So BMTC buses, where 40% breakdowns were actually causing the problem. So then we said Pareto principle, let's target what is in our hand. So we put the data to BMTC, and then good part is they took the inputs in a right spirit, and then they said, like, okay, let us try to see how we can avoid, there were repeat bus failures. Same bus was failing repeatedly at different corridors, right? So these were good inputs to them for them to take a lot of actionable intelligence was actually getting to them. Same thing, potholes. Potholes in Bangalore was a big, I think I'm sure everybody would have gone through the media, and then potholes was also creating a big challenge in terms of having the right kind of speeds and right kind of solutions. So then we also gave the data, started giving the data to them. And once we started doing this part, then we also realized, yes, we are getting input to them, but then whether they are doing it or not, we also need to track. So then the people at the highest authority, they decided we need to have a multi-agency collaboration platform. So then we actually said, like, okay, we stitch all these people together and then make sure that we make accountable. We said, like, okay, once a pothole is identified, we actually give it to them. What time they are actually getting responded to, and then what time it has actually been certified as closure. So that way, more information coming in and the right kind of actionable intelligence going to them and making people accountable to their actions was actually put in place with a dashboard being created and a chief secretary level. They are monitoring and trying to push people to nudge them for actions, right? So while we have demonstrated this particular whole concept there, and in fact, we have started monitoring the travel times on 25 high density corridors also. So then it was actually telling them, it is not that every time the congestion was actually mitigated and situations were improving, things were going bad. So now, but important point is, with the data coming in, the traffic police has been given a bot and mobile app, and then they were able to report incidents. Users are allowed to report incidents and violations. And now with the data coming to us on what is why part of the story, we are able to correlate the reasons, right? And then right kind of actions can be ascertained to those things. So like rightly said, like we want to know the reason so that we can give a right medicine and right fix to them. Now, having done this, what we also realized was the police actually wanted to know, okay, now we are able to do what is current state of affairs. We want to know how do we take it to the next level of predictions. Now then we put an AI prediction model in place, and then we have been able to predict these things based on 3 things. So one thing what we did was we created an event calendar, which actually includes all the public events, like all the special events in terms of political, social, cultural events that are happening in the city were brought to one common platform by creating a permit portal for traffic police to authorize any of these events which are more than 250 people agglomeration. Second thing what we did was anybody who wants to work on the road permits, they also need to go through a permit system so that we know what road is getting closed and what is the impact of that part. And both the things together, this event calendar was enormously helping us to simulate the whole thing and to tell them what is the impact of these things. We created a simulation platform, open source simulation platform, which was actually being used to actually test before giving an approval, right? Now 2 events on the same day in the same location, earlier it used to go just like that. But now they don't do that because they know the impact of it and what's going to be the outcome of that part. Now everything goes through a simulation platform. Even if the road cutting is there, immediately the bus transport agency is being told like there is a road cutting on this route so that your routes need to be rerouted, right? Otherwise, they never knew that the road was actually getting closed. So a lot of these inputs that were actually going on, using this event calendar, using the weather forecast that we have, and using the AI that has learned over the city-specific data over the last period of 6 to 1 year to 2 years now, we have been able to put a prediction model, which is almost like close to 80% accurately. It is able to predict in instances, and we have been able to use that predictions to prevent the kind of situations that Bangalore used to be in earlier situations. So we avoided a lot of those catastrophic events that it used to be there earlier. Now coming about the outcomes and in terms of whether what is the impact of these things, like most of the times on a scale of a junction to a corridor to a area, we have been able to focus on those things and we have been able to show outcomes. Definitely the data is very helpful in terms of monitoring the performance. But the challenge what we see is at a systemic level for Bangalore kind of cities to actually show a dramatic change, it is very difficult for us to do at this stage, at these interventions, what Bangalore Traffic Police alone is taking these interventions, right? So it needs a systemic focus, systemic changes that need to be brought in. Like now, even that is being escalated at the highest level, and now they are looking at policies like congestion pricing to be done, or bus priority, signal priorities to be looked at, what all the dedicated bus lanes to be adopted. So there are a lot of other larger scale things are actually getting driven through this data, what is actually proving to be how this data can be used for rightful intelligence and insights, right? So that's where it is. The important outcomes in terms of numbers on emergency response, in terms of ambulance response times, we have been able to reduce the travel times for ambulances to about close to 30 to 40%. And it is continuously happening. In terms of junction performance improvements, we have been able to almost close to about 20 to 25% improvement is there. Consistently, it is actually working. Travel times along major corridors has been about 15% improvement is there. So these are constantly being monitored and evaluated on a monthly basis. And special events, the impact of special events and these road cuttings and other things, also we have been able to avoid or prevent those kind of things by rightfully doing this. One of the important things when come to data sharing was, what we created is, with so much of data being available, we are not sharing the data. We are actually sharing the insight to the people who are actually rightfully trying to share or take actions. Like, for example, we are sharing the insight about the impact that it can actually create and what type of regulations are being put in place to Googles and MapMyIndias of the world and even the e-commerce service providers, so that they route their operations accordingly. And also share that with the public in a right way. So we have created an API where this data gets shared seamlessly with all the people and in the right kind of things. We created a platform where the BMTCs and BMRCLs of the world know they also have the right kind of information in terms of special events and the road cuttings and all those things available. We are actually sharing the insights and intelligence to them in a right way. So I think when it comes to data sharing, I think important is to look at whether we need to share the data or an intelligence or an insight, and to what type. It depends on the stakeholder to whom we are actually talking. I think that kind of descriptive, if you are able to have, I think that's going to be a important takeaway that we should have.
Thank you, Venkateshji. I'll come to Q&A to audience, but before that, I'll go to Asitji first. He is representing DOT here, and Professor Geeta Krishnan also talked about digital twins. It's something that has been talked about a lot, and Asitji, you've been leading the Sangam Digital Twin Initiative, right? So if you can tell us about the Sangam Digital Twin Initiative, and I think you did a POC with Delhi DMRC also. So what were the key insights from this pilot as well?
Thank you, Narendra. This Sangam Digital Twin Initiative was floated year back by Department of Telecom, and the reason or the purpose of this initiative was that data is in silos and it is not accessible, what we are discussing today. So how it can be made accessible? So data is available, but how it can be made accessible? So when we talk from the telecom perspective, it is not only about the telecoms mobility data that we have already worked upon, but telecom is something which connects to everyone and connects all the time. So whatever you want to do, you can engage with the citizens and you can improvise your all processes which are in the interest of the citizens. And telecom is somewhat omnipresent. So everywhere it is present. So whatever you are collecting, it is not episodic. It is on a continual basis. So what you are collecting is collecting on a continual basis. So if you want to take the planning to the level of agile planning, then it is doable, and telecom is going to play a big role in that. And next piece is that in 6G, sensing is getting converged with the communication. So sensing and communications are getting converged. So telecom will be progressively moving towards a real world observatory. So you are watching not only the mobile phones, you are watching the objects, you are watching the processes, and you can feed the digital twin, geospatial digital twin, and other digital twins, and you can make their refresh cycle faster. So it is not a one-time exercise that you are creating a digital twin. It is updated, all the time updated. So we prioritized transportation sector, but we are working in other sectors as well, energy, health, and other sectors. In transportation sector, the purpose of prioritizing was that outcomes are more tangible, and entities are limited, and they have a big fund which they are spending, and it is easy to convert into a action at an early stage. So we conducted a proof of concept with 2 major operators of the country and Delhi Metro. And that was the purpose, to demonstrate that telecom mobility data on its own can generate an origination destination matrix of the city, and how city moves you can derive from the telecom mobility data. But the challenge was that truth was not there to compare with. So if you want to test or validate, there should be somewhere true values. So we were dependent upon the metro's ticketing systems. So to do that, we have to identify the transport mode chosen by the people. It is not only about the OD matrix, it is OD matrix plus transport mode detection. And we could do that. And we succeeded in matching with more than 80% confidence level. And we have identified the areas and we can improvise it to the 95%. So it can be done very accurately and it can be done on a regular basis. So this data is available. And if you ask a question whether it is accessible, yes, it can be made accessible. But it cannot be made accessible in a raw form. There should be some architecture which is important. So we should not talk about a data sharing. We should state the problem, what we want to solve. And how that knowledge can be shared, that is important. So it is not, the data is not important. Knowledge is important, which I can pass on to you, and you can utilize in your planning. And that solves the problem. That solves the problem of privacy, that solves many problems. Another thing is that what is important, which is missing in session brief and in our discussion, incentives are most important. If incentives are not aligned, you will not get the data, or even if you will get the data, it will be potentially inaccurate or potentially outdated data. And it is not that whatever data is available with us, that is to be shared. We can generate more data. We can enrich it. We can improvise its quality. But why we will do it if incentives are not there? We are sitting in this room and this location has been chosen for this conference. But if you think whether it is connected with the public transport system, this location. So we are talking about the urban transport systems and the accessibility, but we have chosen a location which is not well connected with the public transport system. Whether you are getting a good signal coverage, telecom signal coverage, no, we are not getting good signal coverage while the building is beautiful and a lot of money has been spent on this building. So why it is not possible to get the good public transport connectivity to this place, or why it is not possible to get a good signal coverage in this hall? It is because of the incentives are not properly aligned. We take decisions on certain other parameters while we plan on certain other parameters. So how to do that? Whether we have understood the citizens' needs very clearly, and telecom helps in clearly understanding the people's needs. And it is not what you have understood as an expert. You can get it validated from the citizens. And there are models. We need to work on that your understanding of the problem should also be validated by the citizen. Your solutions should also be validated by the citizens. But what we think that as an expert we know the problem, we know the solutions. And we are not engaging with them. And telecom helps in that. And I can tell you that even a single operator is generating 320 billion data points every day, which can be utilized for the planning purposes. And we have the scale to process them. So it is not that we cannot process 1 trillion data points every day. That can be done. It is an incentive framework which is important. And when we talk about the incentives, it is a tricky problem. You cannot put a price tag on a data in a simple manner. It is not that easy. Because the value of data, if you try to price it as a commodity, you will never get a full value out of this. Because value of the data depends upon the combination of the data with other kinds of the data. And your race to the excellence, that helps. So framework should incorporate all those dynamics and the behaviors which help to bring best out of the data. And we have worked on that. So we are not presenting as a problem. We have a solution also. So we can discuss how to design an architecture privacy by design. And privacy is not about anonymization. It is a very elementary approach, and we have investigated and examined. It is not suffice. Anonymization is not sufficient. it will not help you. You will not get the data. You need to do more than this. You have to take measures, privacy measures at a multiple level, multiple stages, and multiple steps. Then only you will get this data out of, or knowledge out of this data. So if we need to work on those frameworks, and from that perspective, we are working with MAUA, what can be done, and how it can be institutionalized and can be made part of this, so that there is no need to enter into the endless POC process. Now it should be translated into the realities, and people should start utilizing it.
Thank you, Asit ji. Before I move towards wrapping this session, we can take some questions from audience. If anybody would like to raise a question here, can we get a mic there, please?
Hello, I am S.S. Joshi. I was earlier director rolling stock in Delhi Metro. Now, of course, retired and working just like a freelance consultant. I just wanted to know that when in Delhi Metro we tried one concept of super SCADA, where basically the same issue we were facing is that there was reluctance to share the data and the privacy issues between the various systems. So we decided that read-only data can be dumped at a server, and that server data can be analyzed by the user, and dashboard can be created based on the use case, whatever it is. And secondly, similar kind of thing in a kind of a, we were discussing about transport and popularizing the public transport. So as the Google basically shows that which is the congestion route and other things like this, say for example that the various kinds of options which are available to us, then if we basically say that what is the fastest mode of transport from going A to B, and we show that how much time it takes if I go by road or if I go by metro or if I go by metro plus bus and all those things, of course, the connectivity has to be ensured. Then what is happening is basically we are working on the mind of the people, nudging them to basically, without saying, that public mode of transport is the fastest mode of reaching from place A to B. Like in Delhi Metro, we are not required to tell people that they can reach from one place to other place fastest if they go by Delhi Metro. So, means these data sharing, if we can do just by dumping the data and sharing with the Google and encouraging them to basically keep showing when they are showing the Google map or something like this, what is from place A to B. So can it be done? That's what I just wanted to understand. Thank you. Yeah, the congestion, right. No, but I'm saying is that Google is only doing, say for example, suppose I'm going by road, so it's basically telling to me which route to be taken. I'm only saying is that if I want to go by A to B, then various transport options, like the various transport options.
No, I mean, if you look at Google Map, it has options for different modes also. But again, apps like Chennai One, they already do that Rahul spoke about.
Railway is contemplating to take this lead. of getting all the APIs for different. We already collaborated by giving the data for ticketing. Not only for that, multimodal, you know. We are like a backbone, and everything then gets into whether different parts. Metros are localized, and then get into collaboration with Ola and get into collaboration with this. We are now trying to put out our own framework of inviting people to, we will provide the APIs both ways, but I think the best suited for getting this singular app as for the transportation is railways.
Sir, one question.
Sorry,
Yeah.
one last question. I'll just
Yeah.
take one last question because I have to wrap up the session.
Yeah. So, sir, I'm Devesh Srinivas from DIMTS Limited. My question is regarding the telecom data. So, you mentioned that a lot of so much of data is available from each of the operator. The telecom data will give me precise location of the residents and the travel pattern locations, because there is a difference between GPS data and a telecom data. Telecom data, only the accuracy may be limited to the tower coverage and something like that. So can you give some clarification on that?
I think if you go through any kind of a planning, you will find that some household sample surveys are being conducted, and then you are scaling it up to the population scale and doing some sort of a planning with some validation or a calibration. And if you go into the detail, if foundation is very weak, no accuracy, no reliability of the data, and that's why wrong projections are being made. In case of a telecom, you know the fact. It is a fact base that from location A to location B, how many people have moved. Count of the people is very reliable, very accurate, and it is temporal. So you know every 15 minutes, every hour. But if you talk about the accuracy, which sometimes when we discuss that people try to give more emphasis on the location accuracy, we think it is not that important at this stage. And there are ways to fuse data from two sources to improvise it. So definitely, it is not as accurate as in case of a GPS, but what it offers is a far superior quality to do the planning, and it is not a only source. So it is not the only source. You can combine two sources and enrich it and do planning in a better manner.
Sorry, I'll not be able to. Right.
Yeah, I think that discussion really lived up to the expectations, I would say, right? We had challenging questions posed. At the same time, we also saw solutions that are being developed. I think it is important for all of us to understand that there is no free lunch, right? So you can't expect data to just be served on a platter for free, right? We need to have more discussions, right? Everybody knows we are out to make money. The government also knows private sector is out to make money, right? We need to have these discussions in a much more open forum so that it's transparent. I think the key is to not be seen as biased, and as long as there is transparency in the process, that will be ensured. Having said that, I think we are scratching the surface. We tend to usually overhype the short-term effect of new technology and under-predict the long-term effect of new technology, right? So we're all very excited about this now, but the long-term effect of this is quite significant, quite huge, right? So we need a calibrated approach to this, a sustained approach. I think with that, with transparent discussions among all stakeholders, definitely we will move forward. Very, very hopeful about this. So I hand it over to our chairperson.
Thank you, Professor. Over to you, sir.
I think what has been said, no, I think we all converged on to the same thing. First of all, I think whatever has been pointed out, who owns the data? Data availability is not a problem. Who owns the data and how to get it available to various agencies who are interested in it. I mean, government is at it, I'm sure. I mean, platforms like ONDC are coming in, and it's only a matter of time before a framework is developed by the government so that we can leverage on the big data which has been generated from different agencies. I mean, we ourselves are an organization. I mean, as I mentioned, we have KPIs, and we took GST data from e-way bills to see as to how we can improve our market share. A lot of AI in terms of trying to find out where the road movements are taking place, which commodities can be grouped, which clusters can be made, whether a rail siding exists at the location where we are proposing, whether we need to. I mean, it all boils down. Everyone has its own interest in terms of where a business wants to go. I think incentives, as sir mentioned, I think that is crucial. It's only a matter of time. I think government is already at it, and I'm sure sooner than later we will converge onto how to make this happen.
So, thank you to our chairperson and co-chairperson, sir. So, before we continue, I have an announcement to make. Honorable CM of Haryana is coming here over for a session, and his session will be at 4:30 p.m. In Regency Ballroom. So, I would like to invite everyone to attend the session, and everyone is requested to please be seated there by 4:15 p.m. Thank you. Now, I would like to request the Honorable Chairperson, Mr. GVL Satyakumarji, to kindly present the mementos as a token of our appreciation for their valuable contributions to all the speakers. Yes, sir. Mr. Venkata Subbarao Chundru, sir. He is Director, Head of India Operations, Arcadis. The next one is Mr. Kishore Nathani, Managing Director and CEO, Urban Mass Transit Company Limited. Mr. Asit Kadyan, Head of Digital Twin Unit, Department of Telecommunication, Ministry of Communications, India. So now I would like to request the Honorable Co-Chairperson, Professor Geeta Krishnan Ramudurai, to present the mementos to the following persons. Mr. Vijay Kovali, Research Professor at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Next one is Mr. Swapnil Garg, Professor Strategic Management, IIM Indore. So Mr. Rahul Shankar.
Everything is planned.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to request Ms. Shalini Sharma, Professor CEPT University, to kindly come up over. Oh, sorry, ma'am. Ms. Shalini Sharma, Professor CEPT University, to kindly come up here and present a memento to the Honorable Chairperson, Shri GVL Satyakumarji. And our co-chairperson, Geeta Krishnan Ramudurai. Now our moderator, Mr. Narendra Verma. Now I request everyone to, all the speakers to come over here and for a group picture, please.